Shalom, Chaverim, Bruchim Abayim, Shabbat Shalom. This is Rabbi Yitzchak Shapira coming to you live from Ahavat Ammi Ministries right before the Shabbat. We're getting ready to count another day of the Omer. We will do that. Well, it's not time to do it yet. It's not sundown, but just to remind you, if you're watching us, we're going to usher today the 35th day of the counting of the Omer tonight. I hope you've been enjoying the count up of the Omer and counting down towards the prophetic work that is happening right now next week in Bogota, Colombia. We call this time Countdown to Sheerit. And this week has been just a fun week. We had Avi Lipkin with us this morning. Then we had with us Eldad Kainan from Israel, Rabbi Stephen Bernstein from Israel. And into next week, we're going to have with us Rabbi Gil Al-Khadef. This has been fun. It's just been a joy. And by the way, every day there's been a Spanish broadcast. I hope you had a chance to catch this Spanish broadcast that's taking place every day. Now, I got to tell you something. I'm excited about all the guests that's going to be there. They all mean something very, very special to me. But there's one guy who means a lot to me because Yeshivat Shuvu really started when I was in his community and the Lord already was burnt. That's why we announced it for the first time. It was in El Shaddai Ministries in the Tacoma area, in its greater Seattle area. Great ministry, El Shaddai Ministries. This guy, I think, is probably one of the most well-known guys around. I don't know if anybody gets around more than me. It's probably Pastor Mark Biltz. I think he's going to win this award. And I'm so thankful that he is going to be with us in the Congress this year. This is exciting to me, to have Pastor Mark teaching our yeshiva. And Pastor Mark is, in a second, we'll beaming into the studio, but Pastor Mark has been pioneering. I hate to use the term crusade because it has such a negative connotation, but he is a man on a mission. And to see the church is being rectified. And in this Congress, Chaverim, and I don't know if you are aware of that, we're going to have Orthodox rabbis, Messianic rabbis, and prophetic voices like Pastor Mark Biltz, and each one of them is going to talk about Sheerit from another angle, okay? So I just spoke to Rabbi Gil just yesterday, and he wanted to talk about this Messianic expectation of a Sheerit within 2,000 years of Judaism, from Hasidic thought all the way to modern what we call the modern Hasidic Judaism. Eldad Kainan going to talk about the first and second, third century of Messianic Judaism and how integrated it was with normative Judaism. That's exciting to me. Now, I know that Pastor Mark Biltz, Mr. End Time Prophecy, not just going to talk about the past, he is going to be talking about the future. So I am really excited to know what he's going to talk about the future. So without further ado, I'm inviting right now Pastor Biltz. Thank you, Baruch Haba, to this broadcast. It is so wonderful to have you with us. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you great. I hope you can hear me.
Wonderful, wonderful. First of all, first thing first, order of business. Mazel tov on your new book.
Well, thank you.
Recently a new book released. We're going to interview you about the book because I had a chance to read the book. Still, it was in the birthing stages. That book is a mouthful, and you're going after the world with this. You're challenging Messianic Jews, Orthodox Jews, and Christians in one book. That's exciting. That's very exciting. I'm thrilled about this. So tell me, what is happening right now? We have Orthodox Jews, Messianic Jews, and Christians coming to talk about last days. What's up with that? Let's start there.
Well, that's part of what I'll be sharing when I'm there next week. I'm so excited about how there is a righteous remnant from the nations. And they're realizing what time it is. And it is time, for the righteous remnant of the nations to bring Israel back on their shoulders. I lost your voice.
1 second. Time out a second.
Yeah, I lost your
Please
voice.
take a step back. For those who don't know who you are, don't know who El Shaddai is. I mean, I know you, so I jumped into this interview. But let's take a step back. Share the story for one moment about who is El Shaddai and what the Lord has been kind of birthing in the last, 10 years. Let's take a step back here.
Okay, sure. I started El Shaddai Ministries with my wife about 20 years ago. And our whole goal was to restore the Jewish roots back to the Christian faith, for us to return to our roots. And I believe that's what the nations are doing. And so I started El Shaddai Ministry, and amazingly, on every Shabbat service, we will have over 300 cities from over 30 nations live streaming the service at one time. And we have over probably 20 to 30 languages or nations represented in our service.
Shalom, this is Rabbi. Mark, continue. We're hearing you.
Okay, sure. But in our actual service, we have like 20 Russians, and we have headsets, and we translate it live into Russian. We have about 20 South Koreans. We have people from South America, from Europe, China, India, all over the world locally that come. And then we have every denomination, Catholics and Baptists and Pentecostals, every ethnic group, every religion, and we're all trying to understand the Torah from a Jewish perspective.
So do you believe, let me ask you a question, do you believe that we're in the fullness of the Gentiles? Where are we right now?
Oh, I totally think
coming or will come? Where are we exactly right now?
Well, one thing that I find fascinating is that fullness of the Gentiles in Romans 11 actually is quoted back in Genesis with Jacob when he blesses Ephraim and Manasseh.
Melo Goyim is not Paul invention.
No, that's right. And I think it also means the maturity of the Gentiles. He's waiting for the Gentiles to grow up and to mature. He doesn't want a child bride. So
you are seeing this maturing process. Tell me something. Is there a maturing procce?
Oh,
is it
my
happening
goodness.
Already?
Thanks to you. Thanks to what you're doing.
What is this maturing process look like? Pastor Mark, give me 10 years, 20 years. Where do you see the Gentiles heading to right now? Where do you see I call it the Messianic, I'll use the term Messianic churches, okay? Where do you see this Messianicism among the nations leading to?
I see a lot of them are coming together and they're returning. They're returning back to their roots of their faith. They're eliminating replacement theology. But one of the greatest things is in the book of Ezekiel. And it's all about sanctification of the name. And I believe why we exist is to sanctify the name of Hashem. And he said he will be sanctified when he gathers the Galut, all those in the Galut, all the exiles back to Israel. And even when Christians pray the Our Father, hallowed be your name, they're saying, God, take the Jews back to Israel.
Wow. So tell me, first of all, I want to take some. So you've been in the forefront of this now for many years. And I think now there is kind of a trend, we want the Hebrew roots, the Jewish roots of the faith, yada, yada, yada. Everybody kind of trying to jump on this bandwagon a little bit. But this is that's a tough road, That's not an easy road. Share with us, because look, we're talking about Sheerit. We're talking about the remnant.
Right.
There's going to be a remnant from the church.
Sure.
So I said a controversial statement, and I want to take on this. And if you don't want to get controversial, that's okay.
I love it.
I don't like fluff. I like to know straight up.
Right.
When I read the scriptures, and actually, since you and I love prophecy, I'm going to put this on the screen for the benefit of our audience for a second. In Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, chapter 63, verse 1, it says the following in the Hebrew language. It says, and hopefully you can see it on your screen too. It says, "Mi ze ba mi Edom, chamutz bgadim mi batzera." Who is it, the one who comes from Edom, and he is like his clothing is like chamutz? They're like a vinegar. You know, they're like a vinegar on the. And the idea of he's coming from Edom, but if you read the text, Pastor Mark, he's destroying Edom. He's actually destroying, but he's coming from Edom. But he's destroying it in the way out of Edom. Now the rabbi says he's talking about the Mashiach. This is.
I think it is.
So here's the question I have to you, not to get too controversial, but I want to know your opinion. In the last days, when I'm talking about the end of Aharit Yamim, does the church remain standing as its own entity, or is the church as an entity being destroyed? And then the remnant from the church grafted to the house of Israel. Which one is it? You understand what I'm asking you?
Yeah, well,
you on the spot.
It's from the book of Ruth. Ruth is very prophetic, and I'm going to be sharing this. I hate giving some of this away. But Ruth and Orpah represent the church grafted into Israel. They were non-Jews, grafted in. And I believe Ruth in Hebrew means friend. She befriended the Jew, worked the harvest from the barley to the wheat, and brought forth the Messiah through King David. Orpah means to turn your back on, the back of the neck. Orpah represents the church in the last days that turns their back on Israel and goes back to their pagan gods. And as you know, Ruth was the great-grandmother of David. Orpah traditionally was the great-grandmother of Goliath. So the last battle in the church will be between the David remnant church fighting the Orpah.
Wow. So we have two churches.
Within the body. One's the remnant, Ruth.
Wow.
And the other turns their back on. They give Israel a kiss like Orpah did twice, but turns her back on Israel. Just like Esau's kiss. Edom.
Wow. Holy guacamole. I love that. So let me ask you a question. Is this battle already started?
Oh, most definitely. Oh, my goodness. Yes, with all the replacement theology within the church, but there's remnants from every denomination that are coming back, and they're joining the Ruth side of the church.
So that's where, look.
With the BDS as well. A lot of the churches doing BDS movement, joining that. It's horrible.
So let me ask you a question. This is something that nations have to be very concerned with. You know, we are concerned for Israel's salvation. But you are saying something completely else. Whoa, wait a second. I am concerned about the church salvation even more. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Oh, well, I really believe our ministry was to the church. The church. I was talking to both of our good friend, Haitham Besmar.
Yeah.
And I asked him if he thought the church was asleep. And he said, no, it's in a coma.
In a coma. So look, we're talking about the message of remnants is not exclusive to the Jewish people, right? It's a global universal message, right?
Right, exactly.
So if you're to give me a roadmap, I ask you a roadmap, right? A remnant of the physical branch, a remnant in the grafted in branch, their paths are a little bit different.
Of course. Right?
So Israel already have the Torah. They are the Torah. What they need is the Mashiach now, to usher and prepare the way to the Mashiach. And I want to put you on the spot for a minute, not to get too controversial with you, but a lot of people were asking the question, does Pastor Mark Biltz believe the Jews need the Mashiach? Do Jews need Yeshua? Let me be specific.
Well, of course, Yeshua is their Mashiach.
So where do people get this notion, there's, do you know what dual covenant is? Yes?
I know what it is. I don't believe in dual covenant.
You don't believe in dual covenant, right?
Right.
Do you? If the Jews need the Mashiach and the path of restoration to the remnant of the Jews, I'm still talking with the Jews. I'm not talking about the Gentiles yet. For the Jews, if the path is to find Mashiach, they're already holding the oracle of God and the covenant, yada, yada, yada. all the things that Paul tells us. How does Jews, what is this path of remnants look for the Jews? How do we bring the Jews to Mashiach?
How do we bring, well, that may be something I save for the conference.
Okay, very politically correct, very good, very good. But this is an important thing in the back of my mind. Okay, fine. Let me switch with you to the Gentile for a moment.
Okay.
Gentiles. You're telling me that there are two churches. We have right now a lot of people watching us, and they said, which church in SN I identify with? The Remnant or truly Edom? That's what it is at the end of the day.
Right. Well, yeah, the Jews have always thought the church was Esau.
Give me the top 5 belts. Top 5. I want right now, we're going to play a game, Letterman game. Your top 5 steps that the church need to take to leave Edom in their path to restoration. What would it be? What would it look like?
Well, I think that...
Give me some meat, something I can chew on.
Well, I think number one, they need to get on God's calendar. And that's just...
Okay, here we go. I'm going to call it Belt's list. Here you go. Belt's list. I'm going to give it to you. This is our free gift for you. Number 1, calendar.
I'm going to save all 5 of these for the conference. But
all right. Calendar. Talk to me about the calendar. Start there. Here you go.
Well, I think there are a lot of Christians who study the feasts, but they don't keep the feasts or do the feasts. And so for me, it's so important, not that we, just like a bicycle, you don't learn to ride a bicycle by reading how to ride it. You get on it. And so the number one thing for me.
Stop there, though. I want to ask you about this number 1. It's a big one for me. I see all throughout the world, so many Christians, especially what I call Christian Zionists, they learn about the feast, they yearn. You might even see them blow a shofar here and there and this and that. They start to put a lot of Jewish motifs into their worship, but they're not really partakers of the Chagim, the Moedim, and not just feasts, the fasts too, you know?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
My question to you is, what's stopping people going from what I would call real Hebrew root mentality to a true Jewish root? There's a fine line.
Yeah, there is.
Hebrew root and Jewish roots. How do we get there from Hebrew root to Jewish root? What would be your practical advice? What's stopping people?
Well, I think there's 2 things. And they're almost 2 opposite sides of a coin, and they're both wrong.
Okay.
I think one thing that is a problem is some people find their identity in being hopefully one of the lost tribes. They're not finding their identity in the Messiah. So they're coming, but in a false way. Okay. And then the other reason why some people don't is because they're anti-Semitic at heart. They don't want, they love Torah, but don't want to hear anything from the rabbis. And I think a lot of that is from an anti-Semitic spirit that's deep inside.
Wait. I want to make sure I hear you correct. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So you tell me if what I'm hearing you correct. But those who reject Judaism as a system, as an entity, and that's include Jewish interpretation. By the way, Paul says in Romans chapter 3, verse 2, the oracle of God entrusted to the Jews, right?
Right.
So do we have, even in the Messiah, if this is the definition you give, I will ask the question point blank. Do we have anti-Semitism inside the Messianic, what I call the Messianics? Because
very well could. I think I know some places that they'll say, well, I'm part of Israel, but I'm not from Judah. I'm from Issachar, or I'm from Zebulun. And that's totally anti-Semitic.
Yeah, so you know, when you're talking about calendar here, you know, how many times you got the question, oh, you're celebrating the Omer on the wrong day or this or that. I'm sure you're getting like hundreds of thousands of emails like that. The Omer, the counting, and so forth. That's also, it's rejecting Jewish interpretation. Okay? So
some people decide the calendar based on their own cult leaders' barley crop in Israel, or when their own cult leaders the new moon.
So here we go. I'm going to put on Biltz list number 2. Rejection of Judaism and Jewish framework. That's what I'm hearing from you. There's another thing that kind of keep us in Edom, okay? So what would you answer to those? Because you're going to have a big problem in the church, Pastor Mark, because a lot of the church is true sola scriptura. How do you even approach that in the church framework?
Well, for me, the Torah is number one. That's what we need to follow. And we need to realize that these feasts are the feasts of the Lord. Okay? They're his feasts. Now, then there's tradition, and a lot of it is based on history and what they've learned. As you know, a lot of people reject the Talmud. That's a big issue today for a lot of people. But I see it as... Do
you have a problem with the Talmud?
Do
you have a problem with the Talmud?
I don't have a problem with the Talmud because I want to learn. In one sense, like an Encyclopedia Britannica, I go through it and I want to learn as much as I can. If there's nothing against the Torah, I don't have a problem.
I'm trying to get it straight in my mind. That doesn't make sense to me. You are like an enigma. I don't get you. It doesn't bother you, but it's bothering the majority of the Messianic Jewish world. How can it be? What is different?
Why would you think they reject it?
I know it is. I'm asking you. Maybe you can explain to us.
I think some of it is anti-Semitism.
Wow. This is Biltz list number 3. It's basically what I'm hearing from you, that anti-Semitism can take different form. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Exactly.
Anti-Semitism is not just hating the Jews, it's diminishing the calling and the role and what's been entrusted to the Jewish people. That's what I'm hearing.
My whole goal in life is to help the Jew fulfill their mission in being a light to the nations. That's why I'm here. I'm here to enable them to say, fulfill your goal, do your calling.
So, with that being said, if a Gentile go to Israel and still stand in a corner and pass a flyer to a Jew about Jesus, Mark Biltz would say, what?
Go to Rabbi Shapira's yeshiva.
Check is sending to you. Thank you very much. I'm joking about that, but seriously, I'm asking this a serious question.
Well, here's the thing. I think the big problem, and a lot of the church say, how come they don't recognize Jesus? And I say, well, do you remember why Joseph's brothers didn't recognize him? Because he looked Egyptian, he spoke Egyptian. And for the last 2,000 years, the church has been presenting an Egyptian Jesus to the Jewish people, far from his roots.
So here you go. Biltz list number 4, I'm going to call it redressing Messiah. Redressing the Jewish king.
I'm for authenticity. I want authenticity.
What does this authenticity look like in the church? That's what I'm trying to figure out. If it means that a bunch of Gentiles running around dressed like Jews, what does it mean?
Absolutely not. They need to be authentic. The Gentiles need to be authentic. They don't have to pretend. They need to find their identity in the Messiah and be comfortable with who they are in the Messiah. And then also they're free to pick up their traditions, not to become Jewish, but because they're adopted and they're part of the family.
Part of the family, but you know what? If I bring you to the family, let's say you're an adopted kid. I cannot expect you to immediately follow the same rules as somebody who was raised from 8-0, right?
That's why Acts 15, they said, hey, let them begin with quit fornicating with the prostitutes. So they got Moses every Shabbat, and they will grow and learn.
That was the notion. So they slowly will grow and learn. So,
right.
So this is what I think really unique about your ministry and why you're going to bring such important voice to Sheerit, because you are able to raise up people, literally, I'm not joking, guys, in the tens of thousands, maybe at this point already hundreds of thousands been impacted by your ministries. I'm not joking. What is the secret? Because that's one of the topics we're going to talk about. By the way, friends, if you don't know it, Pastor Biltz will going to be taking part on Thursday night. He's going to teach a full yeshiva 2-hour special on Thursday night, May 30th. And then at the nighttime, there's going to be a roundtable discussion. And that's one of the questions that's going to be already presented, I know, by people. But I'll ask you now, just because I'm curious about this. How do you bring people from every nation, tribe, and tongue to the house of Israel without them going crazy in the process? Because you bring in the Torah with the context of the Messiah, but at the same time, it's a balancing act. And that's an important question I wanted to ask you. How do you do that from your perspective, your ministry? What does it mean for a Gentile to come into a covenantal relationship with not just with Hashem, but with the Jewish people? What does it look like, and how do we do it in a way that the Gentile does not go crazy?
Well, I think the whole thing comes back to boundaries. We're living in an age where they're trying to eliminate all boundaries from male and female, from Jew and Gentile, whatever. And I believe there are boundaries, and everyone has to stay within their lane. But for me, the reason why people come from all over the world, locally and internationally, is because we focus on what we have in common. And it's on the Messiah and the importance of the Torah. And Isaiah, he says in these last days, he's going to magnify the Torah and make it honorable. My goal, my purpose is to magnify the Torah, to make it honorable, and explain the Jewish roots of Christianity, how we need to get back to that. And we don't go in the ditch. I stay out of the ditch.
So look, it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verse 2, I guess I'm going to put this question to you in the context of the scripture in Isaiah 2:2, a verse you are very, very familiar with, and I'm sure the people very familiar, and it was in Acharit Hayamim. Let's stop there. Are we in Acharit Hayamim right now? Are we in the last days?
Yes. And the Torah is supposed to go to all the nations from Jerusalem.
So it says there in the end of the verse, I wanted to ask your opinion about this, right? It says they will go up, right, to the mountain of the Lord, and it says there in the text, V'naharu elav kol goim. It's like the word naharu, it's like the word nahar, like a river.
Yes.
They will flock up to Yerushalayim.
Yes.
I am not convinced it's talking about physical Jerusalem. I'm talking about spiritually connecting yourself to the Jerusalem. What does that look like today? In essence, what does the church need? I mean, we talk about those stumbling blocks already. Yeah. But if you're a Christian pastor and you're watching Pastor Mark, right? Mark, what do they need to do? What does the church need to do? Give me a step-by-step kind of a game plan.
Well, I think it begins with Jeremiah, where the nations are going to say, we've inherited nothing but lies from our fathers. Okay, you have to confess, you have to repent. And when we see a lot of from the early church fathers, we've inherited lies and we need to turn from that. That's always the beginning. And then as it says in Zechariah, there will be 10 from every nation grabbing a hold of the seat of the Jews, saying, we heard God is with you. We have to recognize God is with the Jewish people. And until you recognize God has not forsaken the Jews, he's with the Jews, why would you ever grab the corner of their garment and say, we'll go with you, for God is with you?
Mm-hmm. So, it's actually interesting, the word that you quoted, right? Vayachaziku asara goim. It's not Pastor Mark, I'm going to hold it Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. The word yachaziku there in the Hebrew, it's come from the word chazak.
Yeah, be strong.
And they don't let go.
It's go. Like Ruth clung to Naomi. All Orpah did was give her a kiss and go back to her gods.
So what does it look for the church to hold to the covenants or with the covenants? What does that look like?
I think it's going back to the roots, listening, following the Torah, recognizing that a lot of the things we've inherited were lies, and we need to see Yeshua in the Jewish context.
No doubt about it. But I want to ask you about this. One thing I love about the Sheerit, the message you bring, you work with a lot of non-Messianic Jews, right?
Oh, yeah. Almost all non-Messianic.
Non-Messianic, and the relationships is excellent. I must say, it's a blessing. It's really a blessing. You're a real ambassador for anybody who loves Yeshua. And my question to you, when it says in this text that you quoted, that they grabbed the hem of the Jew, the tzitzit, the kanaf, you cannot have a covenant, Pastor Mark, with the Torah. You cannot enter unless you have a covenant with the Jewish people.
Exactly.
The hem of the Jew.
That's what Paul says.
That's supposed to work. Exactly.
Yeah, and Paul says it's their covenant we're joined into. We, instead of thinking that are grafted in, we think Messiah planted a new church in Rome. No, I'm sorry, he did not.
So this is something I think even the Messianic Jewish movement need to get right. We need to have a real, tangible connection with Jewish people.
I think so. See, Romans 11, well, before I go there, everyone in the church knows we see through a glass darkly. We know we only know in part. Romans 11 says the Jews were only blinded in part. So both Jew and Gentile only see out of one eye. And the first group to humble themselves and look out of the other lens gets to see the clear picture.
Oh, that's a blessing to hear that, Mark, and you're a part of it. So it's really come back to the end of the day to humility.
Exactly.
As Messianic Jews, that we have the complete picture and we have all the answers. We are wrong. We are very, very wrong.
That's so right. It all comes down to humility.
Humility.
And sanctifying his name.
Yeah.
It's not about us. It's about him and his kingdom.
So you're going to teach for 2 hours. Your title of your first seminar on Thursday is going to be The Righteous Remnant from the Nations. Is that basically what you're going to talk about? The Sheerit among the nations?
Yes, and what that means and how we come into covenant with them.
I'm excited by this. I promised everybody I'm not going to monopolize much of your time, but if you allow us, there's 1 or 2 questions from our audience.
Okay, sure.
I'm taking a few questions. Is it okay, Pastor Mark?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here we go. We give a question from Yoshia. You're going to see it. He says, what practical, I think you have a typo, but what practical step can we take to unite Messianic believers together to prepare to a larger band of believers coming from all backgrounds? What can we do to unite it? What would you say? Because I see a lot of people, Pastor Mark, that they come into the Messianic faith and the first thing they do, they break all ties and relationship with their families.
Oh, yeah.
Friends. And they're just becoming a living Holy Spirit. That's just going to rebuke everybody, right?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the wrong thing to do.
It's horrible. That comes back to maturity. It comes back to maturity. It really does. And humility. I had a pastor call me and ask me, okay, I've got this big congregation. How do I do this? And it's like, hey, if you have an ocean freighter and you have to turn the ship, you do it very slowly. If you have a car and you immediately jerk it, you're going to roll and have a wreck. I think with everything, the main thing is chesed. It's mercy, loving kindness, humility. Because again, we have to remember it's not about you. It's about him and his kingdom.
Amen. I'm with you 100% there. The thing I will tell people, don't be so
quick to judge.
The Goyim. Don't be. And remember, the Goyim are not under the Torah as a Jew. They are not.
Right.
They're not.
You know what's amazing, Rabbi Shapira? There was a guy, a Gentile from Chicago, that went to a Messianic congregation to see what it was all about after he'd been live streaming me for a year.
Yes.
And the Messianic congregation refused to allow him in because he was a Gentile.
No. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Is that a Messianic Jewish or a Hebrew root?
No, Messianic Jewish congregation would not allow this non-Jew to attend their congregation. So he literally flew on a Friday all the way from Chicago to Seattle just to attend our service, flew back the next Saturday. So here we have a visitor from Chicago, and he's been tithing consistently for the last 5 years. And he calls us his congregation. But these Messianic Jews wanted nothing to do with them.
Wow. So let me ask you a question, not to put you into a trap, but I want to ask you, do you see maybe 5-10 years down the road, even in El Shaddai, taking more, even bringing more slowly, more of the Torah into your own even ministry? I mean, to the point that you might even hold a formal Torah service and things like this. Would you ever be willing to cross over, or is it one of those things that because of how you portray it, it's allow you to be in between? Well, I'm just curious.
I think I've tried to find a fine line bridge where I can connect. My ministry is more to the Gentiles to connect them to Israel. And if we go too full board at once, they won't come. So I'm like the little grade school to bring them in, and then you take them into the high school and college. I am here to bring them so far, and then I want to pass them off to you and let you further their education.
But last time I came to your all offices, I was a little shocked because it was like in the morning and everybody said, "Oh, Rabbi Shapiro, you're coming. We're reciting the Amida now. The Amida prayer." I'm like, what?
Yeah, we've done that for 18 years. We've done it.
I see this progression, but it's very slow and very gradual, but it's very refreshing because people understand it. People understand it. Nobody go crazy about this. Okay, so there's going to be a remnant from the church. We get it now, and I'm really excited about this. But since we don't leave everybody undone, I want to ask you a question because you're like a colorful person, okay? With Pastor Mark Biltz, you either love him or hate him, kind of thing.
That's true.
And we love Pastor Mark Biltz. We're big supporters. So I love the work you do. What would be your advice now, kind of removing yourself, okay? What would be your advice to Messianic Judaism? What does Messianic Judaism needs to do? We talk about the normative Judaism already and the church, and here we are like in a no man's land, Messianic Judaism. What, in your opinion, Messianic Judaism needs to do to have a major skin in this game of Ahavat Yamim?
Well, I mean, when you look at all the different Messianic Jews, I mean, you got the MJAA, UMJC, IMJ. I mean, do they get along? I mean, until they get along and can be united, how in the world do they?
Wow. What a word. A house divided cannot stand. Wow.
That's right.
And our testimony is very poor as Messianic Jews. Sadly it is. We had several more questions. I promise you I won't keep you more than another 10 minutes, but this is such a treat for everybody. Everybody's so blessed by this. Pastor Mark, here is a question from Dina Newman, and she's asking the following. She says, how do the Gentiles keep Torah without becoming Jewish? At what point do they differentiate circumcision, kashrut? What about the one law teaching that Hebrew roots subscribe to? Wow, that's a big question. I'll let you take a stab at that. Thank you, Dina.
Yeah, and leave the question up so I can see it. Well,
sure.
One of the things is, how do the Gentiles keep Torah without becoming Jewish? Well, Abraham kept Torah. He wasn't Jewish. What we have to look at and it says in Genesis that Abraham kept all the commandments and the laws and the teachings, and this was 400 years before Moses even came. So first off, we need to realize if you adopt a Chinese kid and they come to America, we have to understand we don't become Jewish physically. I mean, we just are grafted into the covenant with them. We keep our identity, but our identity now is in the Messiah, just like the Jewish people. We have to realize what is the difference. One of my good examples is the fast days. You were talking about the fast days, like Tisha B'Av.
All right.
Should the Gentiles keep Tisha B'Av, or is that becoming Jewish? Well, again, we have to be careful. Are we looking at an anti-Semitic spirit there?
Right.
Because when you look at Romans 11, the very next chapter is Romans 12, where he says, rejoice with those that do rejoice and weep with those that weep. That was written at the same moment. In other words, there's nothing wrong with you weeping with the Jews on their traditional fast day. That shows you care. Do you celebrate only your own birthday or your spouse's birthday?
I love this analogy. It's also come to me to a question of identification, Pastor Mark, because a lot of people read the Bible, they say they, those are the Jews. The moment it's become we, and it stopped becoming the they, I think then this question become mute completely, because it's part of your identity. It's part of your ancestry at this point,
The problem is the difference between the Greek and the Jewish mindset. The Greek mindset is the individual. The Jewish mindset is the collective. Everyone's in the same boat. And so the Christian tries to say, okay, the Jews are in the same boat, and I'm just going to be in a little lifeboat attached to it, rather than jumping into the boat.
I got you. That's beautiful. She also asked about the one law. What is the difference between your teaching and what we teach, what the Hebrew roots folks say? There's a great difference. So, and it's important to define it. You want to take a stab at that real quick?
Well, sure. I'll just take it from my point of view. Again, it all comes down to the definition of terms. How do you define the word one law? Obviously, in the Torah, it says there was one law for the Jew and the stranger who sojourns among you. But that doesn't mean the stranger can go into the Holy of Holies whenever he wants and say, hey, God, how you doing? There's laws for women. There's laws for judges. There's laws for farmers. And so, yes, there's one law, but that's one overarching law, one Torah. There's not another God giving another Torah. And then within that are many laws applying to specific people, and you need to know which ones apply to you.
That's it. It's simple, and I know people don't like it. But even in the house of Israel, the Kohanim have their sets of laws, the Levites have, and all of Israel have these, their sets of law. That's true. That's absolutely true. So you have to understand something. This is just a conclusion to Dina's question. There is one Torah. There always was, there always will be one Torah. But the way the Torah applied to the Jew and to the non-Jew is different.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example.
Exactly.
Paul speaking harshly in Galatians against circumcision. He had to go and he circumcised Timothy. Why is it? He's saying, he doesn't, and he also said in Romans 7:12, the Torah is good. It's holy. The mitzvah is good. So is he speaking both sides of his mouth? The answer, Dina, is not. He's saying if you take upon yourself the yoke of the Torah as a mode of justification as a non-Jew, you're going to run into serious trouble.
Exactly, because you don't get saved by circumcision. And in other words, okay, I'll get circumcised and I want nothing to do with the Jewish people and I'll go do my own thing. So what he was saying was circumcision doesn't save you. And the people I know many people that think they have to get circumcised for salvation. And Paul,
actually, we're getting there. So here you go. Another question. This one is from Jim Becker. Jim is asking the following. I have heard about the fullness of the Gentiles, but can you give me a 2-3 sentences concise definition? Pastor Mark, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I kind of already shared it during our little video, but for me, the fullness of the Gentiles refers mostly not to a quantity, but a maturity. Well, we're talking about a harvest. You don't harvest the harvest after the first sprouts come up. You don't do the harvest until the wheat is ready to harvest. So God doesn't want to marry a child bride. He's waiting for the church to mature.
That's it. That is it. And this term, Melo Agoim, it's mentioned in the Torah. And I encourage you, if you look at the commentary, the word Melo here from the word Leitmale, full of knowledge, full of maturity, full of understanding. It's a qualitative,
yes,
not a quantitative.
Exactly.
That's it. That's his gym. Here we go. Fernando, we're going quickly to Fernando. And Fernando asked this question. Maybe it's good to put this one to rest. So here you go. Do I have to circumcise if I keep the Torah?
Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that. Even though I was raised Catholic, I was circumcised at an early age. But no, you don't have to circumcise yourself, and you can still follow the Lord and be saved.
Absolutely. I would say this, continue with Yoshaya, the same nature. If I become a ger, circumcision is necessary. I would say circumcision of the heart is
it mentions that twice in the Torah. It's a circumcision of the heart.
You know, Pastor Mark, it's very interesting because when in the Torah there is a very interesting passage, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. When the famine is coming, Pharaoh says to the people, whatever Joseph tell you to do it, but the Torah is muted. It's not saying much more than that. The question Chazal was asking, what did Joseph tell them to do? And actually very interesting, the rabbi said, this is a picture of Acharit Ayamim. And they said this. The Midrash says that Joseph told them to circumcise themselves because one day the brothers will return. Okay? One day the brothers will return, and he doesn't want them to feel like they are foreigners in the land. He wants to make it easy for them to come and meet Yosef. That will be the answer I will give you, Yoshaya and Fernando and anybody else who asks this. Circumcise your heart in such a way that it make it easier for the house of Israel to come and meet Yosef, who is the Mashiach. That is the answer.
And that's humility.
That's humility. It's not necessarily circumcision of the flesh. Now, if God truly called you to do a circumcision of the flesh and it is from the right motivation, that's a heart issue. But I tell you the truth, I met so many people who did Brit Milah and they really did it for their own altruistic reason, rather as a testimony for the house of Israel.
Yeah, so who's going to see it anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Pastor Mark, Shabbat is coming upon us. We got to run. So give us 2-3 sentences. You're going to be in Sheerit. Everybody is excited. This is going to be a prophetic time. We are in a season that prophecy is being fulfilled. What should be watching for right now as we are preparing the Sheerit? One high headline sentence or two as conclusion, Pastor Mark.
By you say preparing, you're saying preparing for Messiah's coming or preparing for the conference?
Exactly, for Mashiach coming.
I think the most important thing we can do is to attend your conference.
Just come. Listen, friend, if you want live stream, listen, if you need and want to be part of an awesome teaching every Shabbat, right now on your screen, El Shaddai Ministries.us. Every Shabbat at 10
Pacific time.
10 Pacific time. Join Pastor Mark Biltz. Pastor Mark, we're excited. We're in Lacharit Hayamim.
Hey,
People ask me all the time. I went to the post office. Somebody told me the other day, aren't you scared? I can't wait for the rapture. I said, what there is to be scared about? I know how the story ends.
That's right.
And
for me, I'm not looking for the rapture. This is the Super Bowl of human history. Put me in the game, coach.
That's what I say. All right, Chaverim, if you're watching us live, I encourage you, go and register. We put a special link. If you put in the bar the word belts, you're getting everything from, instead of $175 for $100, the full 5 days, including, by the way, Pastor Mark Biltz 2 hours yeshiva on Thursday, and his roundtable on Thursday night, and his teaching in the Congress. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. So, Chaverim, this is the season of Sheerit. Let's get ready. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom. Pastor Mark, if you hang tight for just 1 second, stay on the broadcast with me for 1 more second. For the rest of you, I say Shabbat Shalom. We put one more time. You see the link on your screen. I'm excited because there's going to be some serious Dvar Torah, words of Torah being taught, not just in Yeshivat Shuvu, globally, worldwide. We already have people registering from literally all over the world. we're excited. Join us, be part of this end time. Prepare the way for the King Mashiach to come. להתראות חברים, and God bless.